All right, in honor of the one jersey, I got today, which is legitimate, as it turns out, um, Carolina's third. I figured, why not do a video on why Carolina missed the playoffs? There's some simple reasons Carolina missed the playoffs, and this Hartford hat is because I don't have a Carolina hat. So I apologize, but I don't have a Hurricanes hat to make this work, so I'm going with Whalers. Again, apologies. Carolina started the season with 2 overtime losses. They started the season with 5 losses in 6 games. Those 6 games were all on the road. The first reason Carolina misses the playoffs is their schedule. Through the end of, or through their first 20 games, they had 8 wins, 8 losses, 4 overtime losses. They had to fight from behind in terms of their standing, in terms of where they were. And you can't do that and succeed. I said early in the season, and this is because it's something that I saw on TSN, Sportsnet, elsewhere, teams that start out of the playoffs at the end of October usually aren't in the playoffs in April. It is very difficult in a league that has so many 3-point games to make up points that you're behind on other teams, especially when you're behind multiple teams, which Carolina was right away. Carolina, Tampa, the Islanders, they were all at the very bottom of the East at certain points during the season. And for Carolina, and it was said as well, and it's true, their goaltending didn't help. Ward's inconsistent. Cam Ward's been inconsistent his entire career, minus the Stanley Cup back in 06. I think the Stanley Cup in 06 has given him 40 or 50 mulligans as the starting goaltender in Carolina that he wouldn't have got if they did not win that Stanley Cup in 2006. I don't even know if he'd still be in Carolina if it wasn't for that Stanley Cup win. Eddie Lack didn't help. Lack had the worst save percentage in the league of any goaltender who was a starter or backup and had played a certain number of minutes. The worst. And, 3/4 of the way through the season, he gets called out for it. I made a video on how I felt bad for Lack. I didn't feel like he was getting as many opportunities. But I remember when Eddie was in Vancouver. His last year in Vancouver, a lot of people have this romanticized vision of Eddie. And when Eddie left Vancouver, fans were very upset. Because Eddie Lack's a very personable guy. He's funny. He's a very nice guy. He has no problem with self-deprecating humor. It's very easy to like Eddie Lack. But he's a horrible starter. And I don't mean that in terms of a starting goaltender. I mean in terms of October, November, December. He's terrible. And he does really, really well the last couple of months of the season. But by that point, you're already out. So what happened in Vancouver was his last year here. I remember, I would hear Eddie Lack's the starter, and I would say to friends of mine, I guess Vancouver doesn't want to win tonight. That was my honest response. And then Eddie started turning it around the time that Ryan Miller got hurt. And Lack all of a sudden was a pretty good goaltender and played pretty well. And because that was the last thing that Canucks fans remembered when Lack was traded off for not a whole lot, Canuck fans were like, we could get more than that for Lack. Lack's a much better goaltender than that. Remember this game, remember that game. And the reality is, he's an average goaltender. Lack is an okay backup, but man, you really wish he could play in October the way he does in March. Because those points in October are just as important as those games in March. Carolina went on an incredible run the last third of the season. These jerseys were part of the reason why. They had an incredible record wearing these jerseys. And that's part of the reason why I said I would be shocked if these weren't the jerseys next year. But as you people can see, I'm trying to collect third jerseys now while they exist, because the regular jerseys are going to be readily available everywhere. But the third jerseys, I've learned through past experience, once they're gone, they're done, and then they become really expensive. These should not be third jerseys. These should not be retired. These should be the regular shirts. I'm superstitious, though. In terms of next year, I see Carolina in the playoffs. I saw Sebastian Aho, who was another one. Okay, he had an okay start. I thought he was playing really well. By the end of the year, though, genuine top 6 forward, 30 goal potential, really fantastic player. And the entire team had turned it around. Really strong defense from 1 through 6. Really liked what Carolina had going. Ward had started playing better. I still think if Carolina's going to fix things next year, I think looking at a brand new goaltender might be the way to go. I'm not sure who you look at, but expansion's coming in. Maybe Vegas picks somebody up that you can flip for. I don't know. You've got to do something, though. I don't think Eddie Lack comes back next year, based on the experience he's had. I speculated that the coach could find himself on the unemployment line towards the end of the year. I think the run they went on at the end of the year saved his job. Well, he hasn't been fired yet, and I think if he was going to be fired, it would have happened already. Rarely do you see a coach fired well into the summer. So if he's still there at the draft, he's their coach in October. But for Carolina, the schedule was not their friend. Left them behind the 8 ball. They played, 6 of their first 7 were on the road. They played 11 of their first 20 were on the road, and it was a brutal road trip at the start of the year. Or no, it was, no, they had 8 of their first 10 were on the road, 9 of their first 12 were on the road. I was looking at the wrong month. Just very road heavy schedule the first 2 months. And it really hurt them. Really, really hurt them. So yeah, Carolina, if they can avoid that slow start next year, if the schedule maker doesn't decide he hates them, and if they fix their goaltending so that October's goaltending is just as good as it is in March, there's no reason this team shouldn't make the playoffs. This was a weird season. I look at the West, and I can't really think of a team that missed the playoffs that I think, man, if they'd made it, what could they have done? Other than Winnipeg. If Winnipeg had found a way to storm into the playoffs, I think they would have taken Chicago out too with the way they were playing. But in the East, you have Tampa, you have the Islanders, and Carolina, who all 3 of them, I think, could have done real damage in the playoffs had they made it. And Toronto's made noise in this series. They're down, or they're up 2-1. They're down in the game I'm watching right now, 4-2. It's halfway through the second. So, I think Tampa would have knocked Washington out. I think the Islanders definitely would have taken them to 7 because Washington and the Islanders traditionally have a very hotly contested relationship. And I think Carolina, because the Hurricanes always seem to overproduce in the playoffs. They go way beyond expectations. I think they're dangerous come playoff time. I think the East, as much as we saw teams make the playoffs this year that didn't last year, I think next year will probably be the same story. And I think it's going to be a very tight race. So if you're a Canes fan, you've got a fantastic young core, really solid young defense. The goaltending probably needs to be better, and we'll see what happens with that. But, yeah. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you for watching. And I love this shirt. I love this shirt so much. This is just so... This shirt could almost make me a Canes fan. It's just so... It's so sharp. And it's so... I can't say enough good things.